the ending really pissed me off. You weren't sure if you were being lied to or not in the book. And it's just a cute alien romance. Any pop culture references tend to age books a lot. Hello, my lovely people. Welcome back. My name is Vidi for those of you who are new here. It is the start of May and it's time to review and wrap up everything I read. We're just going to jump straight into it and we're going to try to move this kind of fast. Here are the physical books I read. I read a total of 10 books. One of them was a novella, 2 of them were fantasy books, 1 was a dark romance, 4 were regular romance books, 1 was literary fiction, and the other one was sci-fi / classic. The first book I read was the novella Steel Scars by Victoria Aveyard. I read this on my Kindle. So this was just a really short story. It gave a little bit more context about the Red Queen world and mostly focuses on the rebellion side of it all. If you have read The Red Queen, I feel like I think I might have read it a little bit too early because it did give away information that could have been shocking in the second book. So I read it before the second book. There is a lot of language you have to get used to because it is coded. So there are messages that are coded and eventually you kind of get used to them. But I think that was the reason why I had such a hard time reading it the first time. But I did get through it because I really wanted to read it before the second book. So other than that, simple book. I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. I think it was good information. I just had a very hard time getting into it and getting through it. And for a novella that is not that long, that definitely brought the rating down a lot. The book I picked up after that was actually the second book to the Red Queen series, which is Glass Sword. It had been months since I read the first book, so I will completely be honest, made the mistake of not reading the first book and just jumped straight into the second book, realizing that there's a lot of information I have forgotten about. Because of that, my rating might not be so fair, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Here it is. Sorry, I don't know why I didn't bring it up. I read it in the physical format. This is the second book in the Red Queen series. I don't want to explain too much about it because it will spoil what happens in the first book. To make a long story short and summarize as much without spoiling, basically our protagonist Mare has escaped the Silvers only for a new king to be hunting her down. This story feels like more about character development and trauma and how that trauma and anxiety is shaping Mare's personality and character. There's so many times where you do feel like you just want to facepalm yourself at some of the things that Mare does, but when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, the way she describes certain things, you can tell she is anxious, she is scared, she has a lot of PTSD going on. That is a very honest response to trauma. And the ending was insane. It took me everything not to just jump straight into my car and go get the third book because I really wanted to read what happened next. I think overall I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. It was a good story. It kept me hooked and it kept me engaged. It was hard for me to get into and I think that's my fault and that's why I'm saying that the rating might not be fully fair. I just didn't have all the information I needed going in because I had forgotten a lot of it. Now the book I picked up after that was another Kindle read. This one's called Leave Me Behind by K.M. Moranova. Leave Me Behind is a dark romance. It does have a trigger list at the beginning. It is a military / bully romance. I was a little bit hesitant, not because about the military side, but the bully side. I wasn't sure if I wanted to read that because that's normally not the stuff I read, but I have had it recommended to me a few times and I'm just like, okay, I'll try it out. So this story follows our main protagonist, Nell, who was the only survivor from the riot squad after an ambush killed basically her whole squad. And she's being transferred to a new squad called the Malum Squad, which Malum actually blames Riot, Nell's old squad, for the death of one of their squad mates. And because of that, they don't want her. They want to kick her out. They want to make her quit. So they decide to make her life miserable. That's kind of the story. It follows Nell navigating this new squad and trying to prove herself. I forgot who the main love interest is. So then of course there's someone within that squad. His code name is Bones. I cannot for the life of me remember his actual name, but his code name is Bones. He's always wearing a mask and no one is allowed to know his identity. So like I mentioned, this is a dark romance. Check the trigger list because this is also a bully romance on top of all of that. I actually did end up liking it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the tension. It wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be, but I do know that that can be a very sensitive issue to some people. But the ending really pissed me off. Like I was mad mad. I was so mad. I think there was just not enough depth into these characters for it to warrant that kind of ending. And I think that's what really pissed me off, because everything was kind of surface level. Definitely it's a book that focuses on the lust, on the tension. Yes, there's some romance, but it's not like a romance story. It's definitely more about like possession and obsession. I feel like the ending would have been a little bit better if we had more character depth in these characters in general, but it really pissed me off. I was not happy with it. Anyway, that's Leave Me Behind. I did give it a rating of a 3 out of 5, and as for Spies, I would say a 3 out of 5 as well. Now, the book I picked up after that was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This was my in-person book club book. I don't know why I decided not to tab books starting with this book, because there was so much that I could have just so much in this book, so much. Yellowface, if you have not heard about the story, follows the life of an author, Juniper, whose only author friend, and I want to say whose only friend, ends up dying by choking on a pancake. And Juniper ends up stealing her friend's, Athena's, manuscript and publishing it as her own. It just follows the story about Juniper and her consequences and like her dealing with what she did and stuff like that. This covers things about like reverse racism, cultural appropriation, being like a token in a company and stuff like that. We also follow this narrator who is so unstable as the book continues. You could see her kind of going insane because of the paranoia that she has. I don't have any kind of credentials or certifications to diagnose anyone, but it felt like we were in the head of a narcissist. And a lot of the times you just felt like you weren't sure if you were being lied to or not in the book. I could not put this book down. It was so enrapturing. Towards the end, the shift of the type of writing it is, it almost feels like you're reading a story within a story. It's a very interesting story. I really could not put this down. It was a really, really good book. We enjoyed talking about it so much. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. I would recommend this book to anyone who just wants to do some good critical thinking and stuff like that. The writing itself is not hard to read. It's just the topics themselves definitely make you think a lot more. So after that, I needed a nice book, a cute book. So I read another book on my Kindle. Stay with me for this one, okay? This one's called Married to the Alien Cowboy by Ursa Dax. If you have read The Ice Planet Barbarians, it is literally like that. It is a story about our main character Cherry, who is running away from some debt collectors and decides to join this bride program where they are sending women to this colony for the alien males there. What this program is not telling the human females is that the males that were there are convicts, and that's why they are in this colony isolated. So it follows Cherry and her husband, because literally as soon as they arrive, she could still say no, but as soon as they arrive, they get married. So it follows Cherry and her husband, Sylar, who are just trying to learn how to live with each other, and it's just a cute alien romance, spicy without it being super spicy. There's a lot of spicy tension, but it is not overly spicy either. Nice, easy read. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, and as for Spies, I'm going to say a 2.5 out of 5. So the book I read after that was my most anticipated read of the month, which is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. As you all know, if you don't, you will, I am a fan of Abby Jimenez. I love her writing. She's one of my favorite authors, and I will read anything she writes. Now, because of that, I have a bias when it comes to her writing. Keep that in mind. This follows the story of Xavier and Samantha, who meet for the first time and don't have the best first impressions of each other and meet up again. Xavier decides he was being a bit of a dick and apologizes to Sam, and they end up actually going on a date, and it's the most unforgettable, beautiful date that they've ever experienced. Problem is that Samantha's leaving. Yeah, it's just a romance between Samantha and Xavier, who are trying to be together, but they have so many things that are stopping them from being together because of just life. This does cover a little bit more heavier topics again. This one, Samantha deals with family that has dementia, and then Xavier deals with like abusive family and stuff like that as well. So they do both have a lot of trauma they have to kind of work around through. So overall, what did I think about this book? I really liked it. I know a lot of people did not like it, and I know that the consensus is is that this felt very different from her usual writing, and it is. It doesn't feel as rom-com as her other books. This feels more closer to literary fiction with the romance twist to it, just because of a lot of the trauma that they have to work through. Sorry, my camera overheated. Overall, my experience with this, I really liked it. There were a few things that I did not enjoy, and even as a fan, I cannot really overlook, and one of them was just the dad's actions. That's just due to like my own morals and stuff like that, and it was really hard to accept. And again, I understand the situation they were in is difficult, so you really don't know what you're going to do until you're in that kind of situation. I didn't like how it was justified, basically. I understand that that takes a lot of emotional intelligence to accept and to kind of forgive and stuff like that. The one thing that really irked me at the beginning was the Rhysand references. There was so many, and I don't understand why. I feel like I would have enjoyed them if there was only one, but I feel like any pop culture references tend to age books a lot. There was just too many. There was too many. Other than that, I really did enjoy the story. There was a lot of emotion for me. There were a lot of moments where I did want to cry. Overall, I will rate this book a 4.5 out of 5. It was very much a close 5, but there's just some things I really couldn't overlook. The book I picked up after that was Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This is one of the banned books that I read for the month. This story is I want to say kind of like sci-fi dystopian novel kind of situation. It follows our main character Lauren, who lives in this world where they live basically in these gated communities because the drugs that were released to the public throughout times just made it very dangerous to live not in a gated community. People can't really pay for anything, and the environment is just terrible, so people are running out of water and stuff like that. And it just follows the journey of this girl becoming a woman who has her ideas of her own religion. It is a very interesting story. It is not a religious book. In fact, I would encourage to read it because it does have some good conversation about religion and what surrounds religion and the idea of faith and beliefs. It is a book that covers on environmental issues and issues with drugs and the consequences of lack of resources due to drug abuse and stuff like that. So it is a very hard read. Because of that, I do recommend seeing if there's a trigger list or trigger warning somewhere out there, because these do cover heavy topics and I needed breathers between each chapters here and there. So I read this back in college. I enjoyed it then and I enjoy it now. Parable of the Sower, I will be giving this a 4.5 out of 5. Sorry, camera died now. The book that I picked up after that was The Empress by Kristen Cast. This is a kind of modern fantasy / cozy fantasy book. I'm calling it cozy because it felt a little bit cozy to me. It might not be that cozy. The story follows Hannah, who is supposed to be your typical Gen Z adult who does not have her life together. She is trying to work on herself and goes into the store, ends up getting a tarot card, and then just proceeds to having a really bad day, a really bad week. On the worst day of her life, according to her, she ends up falling into this tarot card, into the world of Towerfall, where she is supposed to be the key to solving the problem of this world. So that's kind of the gist of the story. It follows Hannah and like her trying to go through a self-discovery journey, as well as trying to figure out if she really is supposed to be the one to help this world. And there is a bit of a romance with this warrior / vigilante kind of person who is more just like a regular warrior that got exiled, and his name is Kane, and there's just supposed to be a romance that blossoms between them. So I did read this in my last reading vlog if y'all want a little bit more detailed explanation and my reactions to this book. Overall, the story was a good story. It was not my favorite, but I also didn't hate it. It was easy to read. It was nice to consume. It's a standalone. Oh my god, I'm so glad this is I'm so glad this is a standalone because I have been wanting to read standalone fantasies. I'm getting kind of tired of reading these uncompleted series. I like the tarot card aspect of it all. I think the Gen Z references are kind of funny, but as I mentioned earlier, pop culture references tend to age a book, and this has a lot of pop culture references, like a lot of them. So it really just depends on your opinion on how you feel about modern pop culture references in books. Because this is like a Gen Z falling into a fantasy world, that whole idea is just so appeasing to me because like I want to fall into a fantasy world. It would have been fun to see someone who is really into fantasy books or into like D&D or stuff like that fall into this kind of world and just like live out her fantasy. That would have been so much fun, but that's not the case here. She's just trying to get back home, which, you know, valid, fair. You're living in this world where like women are still very much oppressed and stuff like that. With that said, one of the things I really liked about the book is the narration style. It felt like a fairy tale kind of story, but then you had times where the narrator was reminded that this was currently her life and death is still equally as possible, as well as pain and abuse and stuff like that. So there were these moments of like a bucket of cold water thrown onto you where it's just like, oh yeah, wait, I literally just saw someone get killed kind of situation, right? Because obviously our main character has never seen that before. I kind of like that. I hope that was on purpose, but it was a very interesting balance. Since this is a kind of romantic-y situation, that's the reason why the rating is a little bit lower than it should have been, because I didn't like the romance. I really did not like Kane. There was just a lot of little things that added up to one whole thing, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't support. Because of that, I did end up rating this a 3 out of 5. As for Spice, I would say a 2.5 out of 5. It was a good book, good concept. Not sold on the romance part of it, which sucks because it is a romance book, but oh well, that's fine. Now, the book that I read after that, I technically read it between The Parable of the Sower and The Empress. I read it throughout that whole time that I was reading those, and that is Good Game by Madison Fox. I read this on my Kindle, on Kindle Unlimited. Now, Good Game is not necessarily a dark romance, but it's also not a rom-com. I think Good Game is more in the Anna Huang kind of realm with like the Twisted series kind of books. That's what this kind of book felt like. Good Game is a masked gamer romance. The story follows our main character, Stevie, who is an artist, is helping out her friend at this event where she ends up catching the eye of one of like the biggest video game streamers. His name is Nightblade, or his tag name. The whole like twist to it is that the reason why the streamer and like this group of streamers, because he's part of this group called The System, why they're so popular is because they are anonymous, so they wear masks. She obviously caught the attention of Nightblade, and there's just kind of like some lusty tension between the two. Fast forward to a bit later, she ends up catching the attention of another man named Alexander, who she does not know is the same person as Nightblade. And basically it's just kind of a story between Nightblade / Alexander and Stevie, and it's just a spicy kind of book. Now, like I said, it's a spice book. Possessive, obsession, insta-lusty, not necessarily insta-lovey, insta-lusty. You don't really see too much of the romance develop, you're just there for the sexual tension, let's be honest. It was just an overall good book. Considering the kind of heavy stuff I was reading, it's exactly what I was looking for. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. Overall, I'm rating this a 4 out of 5. As for Spice, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Now, the last book that I read for April is a reread, and it's Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is the book that got me into like my obsessive mode when it came to books. And you know what? It lived up to its expectations as a reread. And I think again, it's because of a bias. I talk about this book quite a lot on this channel, so I'm going to keep this one short after I give my camera a break to cool down because it's heating up again. So Things We Never Got Over follows our main character, Naomi. She got a call from her sister Tina, who needed help and was the perfect excuse to leave her wedding. She ends up in this small town called Knockemout and is waiting for her sister, only to meet the grump of the town, Knox. And Knox believes that Naomi is Tina because Tina and Naomi are twins, and Tina has the worst reputation in this town. So Knox gives off the worst first impression, confusing Naomi as Tina, and there's kind of this tension that builds up between them. Eventually, Naomi finds out that Tina ends up stealing her car, breaking into her motel and stealing anything of value, and then leaving her daughter behind so Naomi could take care of her. It's a grumpy sunshine story. Waylay Denise is freaking awesome. I love her. She's one of my favorite characters in the story. Naomi is like the sweetest little ball of sunshine with a little feisty streak in her. Knox is such a dick sometimes. Like, I'm not going to lie, I can't believe I forgot about that. But when he's nice, he's adorable. He's more of a man of action rather than a man of words. That's kind of like the gist of the story. I love this story. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. As for Spies, I'm going to say a 3 out of 5. Good book. These are the books I read plus the 4 on my Kindle. That's it. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have read any of these books or you have any book recommendations, please leave them down in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. If you haven't done so and you would like to, please subscribe. I usually make book content and now and then slice of life kind of vlogs. But thank y'all so much for watching. Have a beautiful day and I will see y'all next time. Bye bye.